Hello and welcome to Sportsline with me, Shehan for Daily Mirror Online. The sport of rugby has had a long, rich history in Sri Lanka with a following that's probably second only to cricket. But despite other sports recommencing after the pandemic, rugby has had a slow restart due to logistical issues. And only last week, we had the first tournament in more than a year conducted by the Sri Lanka Triforces. Former Sri Lanka Rugby President Asanga Seneviratne was recently appointed as the chairman of an advisory committee to Minister Namal Rajapaksa and Sri Lanka Rugby. He joins us today and he will tell us a bit about the future of rugby in Sri Lanka. Thanks for joining us, Asanga.
Thank you, Shehan.
So you're known for your association with rugby, but you were also a first-class cricketer who I believe came very close to representing the country at the highest level. What drew you to these two sports?
Well, it was very natural. In our childhood, every child would want to play cricket or rugby. I was fortunate enough to play both and to play both at the highest level. I did play for the Sri Lanka under 23, and those times were tough times. We had the JVP uprising, we had the civil war which started, and I think Arjuna Ranatunga summed it up really well when he said between 1985 and 1991 he had the opportunity of only playing 5 test matches, and out of that one was played in Sri Lanka, that too was abandoned after 2 days. So the standard was extremely high, the competition was really tough, and I by the time we came to 92, 93, although I was playing first class cricket for CCC, I had virtually given up trying to play for Sri Lanka because I was very involved in my work, and also, as you know, I played a lot of rugby. I was involved in administration. I was a coach at club level, school level, and then at national level. So I've been very involved with rugby football, and that too drew me away from cricket a bit. But obviously I was involved a lot with cricket after. I was a vice president for about 4 or 5 years. I was in the interim committee. I was head of sponsorship. So I've been very involved with Sri Lanka cricket too.
Right. Did you ever find there was some sort of a skill that was common between both sports?
Absolutely. It's both ball games, and you have to have a very good hand-eye coordination for that. And that is one thing. The other is the skill of being able to play a sport like rugby or soccer really helps you in cricket, and vice versa. And in our days, it was very natural for children to play both sports. Everybody played both sports. In the interval during school, we would have like 25 kids in our class. All 25 played. It wasn't like 4 or 5 or 10. Of course, there were only like a few who would continue because a lot of them focused a lot on their studies. But sport was a very big thing at that time. I think it still is, to the extent that every child wanted to excel.
Right. Obviously, you've come a long way since then, and you've been involved with rugby on different levels, on so many different levels. As an administrator, do you feel like there's a benefit to having not just played the game but also coached the game?
Certainly. I always believe that you have to go through the entire gamut of it, in the sense that, for instance, I was a player at school level, then I went on to club, national, and then I had the opportunity of coaching schools first, and then I went into clubs. So I started at under 23 level as a coach, then I went into the national setup. Of course, then I came into the rugby union. So obviously it gives me a good foundation and a good experience overall. Everybody can't, do all that, because sometimes time is an issue. You're committed to your family and you have also your job to think about. But I have been blessed, so I was lucky. Not lucky, I was blessed. So the bottom line was, you also must want to do it. Yeah, it does help. But I must say, there are many people who have never played the game at elite level, but who love the game a lot, who have a vast knowledge of the sport, and they are also very much part of the entire setup. So we must be careful when we say that, we must only look to people who have actually played the game, because, you get the good, bad, and the ugly in everything. So when it comes to sport, it's the same. So there are a lot of good people who can contribute a lot to the sport. So I'm somebody who believes that we must bring a mix into it.
Right. Just last week, you were appointed as chairman of the Rugby Advisory Committee to the Sports Minister. The function has been likened to something similar to what Arvind De Silva's committee has been doing in terms of advising the minister and Sri Lanka cricket. What are the pressing areas that you see need to be addressed in Sri Lankan rugby right now?
Yeah, so the minister, the honourable minister has come with this plan to appoint committees for not just cricket and rugby but for all sports, because what he feels is that some of the federations need support, they need guidance, and more so the fact that as sports minister he plays a critical role in supporting all sports in the country. So let us talk about rugby, for instance. As you know, it has not restarted. So his main aim in this was to restart rugby. And this all came about with all the stakeholders actually speaking to him, speaking to me, and speaking about the situation that Sri Lanka rugby was in. The federation was finding it extremely difficult to restart. Sponsorship is a critical area that is now being affected with COVID. So there are many areas, not just about just restarting, but how do we get Sri Lanka rugby back on track? As you know, from 2012 to 2018 was a period that I was involved as president. Before that, I was involved as vice president. So I've had a long run, and we had a comprehensive plan to take Sri Lanka rugby to the next level. Our aim was to play in the Olympics. To play in the Olympics, you have to end in the top 2 in Asia. We achieved that top 2 status by 2017. Unfortunately, 2018, we fell one goal short at the Asian Games when we lost to Japan by 2 points. Now, you must know that Japan side had 2 World Cup players plus in the 15s who were playing for the 7s, plus a world-class team, because Japan is always in the top 10 in World Rugby. So that's the level we came up to, and that encompassed a fairly long-term plan. I think any rugby plan has to be a 4 to 8 year plan. You cannot, overnight sort things out. So now what's happened is, with this lull for 2 years, we are in a very difficult situation. A lot of players have given up the sport. Clubs are really suffering financially, as well as, the ability to garner sponsors have come to a standstill, and there are lots of pressing needs. As you very correctly said, the tournament that even took place was hosted by the police, and the rugby union has not been able to even host a tournament. It's not their fault, it's the system, because the medical approvals, the bubble that you have to have and stuff like that. I don't think the rugby union was in a position at this moment to go through that phase and to be able to do it. But they very correctly supported the tournament, and we had a good tournament. But I must say the standard of rugby definitely was, obviously because of the long layoffs, was below par. And we are now faced with the challenge of playing in the Dubai World Cup qualifiers on the 5th and 6th of December. So I think we've appointed a world-class coach, and we have got the pool in place. So I hope and pray that they step up.
Right. You mentioned about how clubs and players are finding difficult to sustain a career in rugby. Is there anything that the advisory committee feels it can do or it can recommend to kind of fix that?
Definitely. Rugby players were very self-sufficient. We actually brought in the, as you know, the Carlton Sevens it was called, and then the International Sevens, where we had world-class players coming in and playing alongside our players. Not only uplifted their play, the standard of play, it also uplifted their living, because some of the bids started at 2 million for each player for 2 weeks of playing, and some went up to nearly 15-16 million. So it was fabulous, and that gave us a base to have professional players. Clubs were paying close to 100,000 a month. They also got the players jobs, and so obviously they were very well looked after, and also their income was way above the standard of living in Sri Lanka. Now all that has changed, because a lot of those companies now have done away with the rugby players because they've cut their budgets with what has happened economically in the country. So it's a double whammy for them. They've actually lost their jobs, plus they've lost the income from the clubs. So it's really hard. So we have to start again, and we are a resilient nation. We're a resilient sport, and I'm sure we'll come back. But it's a lot of hard work. So when you take the advisory, the reason the minister has appointed us is to look at all these things. Plus also the ability to get sponsors, as I mentioned earlier, plus to get these boys back into the framework of playing together with a sustainable income. So the minister would like our advice regarding how we do this. Plus also, we will have to have the sports ministry support. Now the sports ministry has a budget of 7 to 8 billion a year, and none of it actually went to high performance. But this sports minister has put a high performance committee in place. We've already started, supporting 60 odd athletes. I think we have already started, I know we have started supporting 5 federations. Some of the federations can't even get their presentations together, to even access the funds. So we are helping them along and getting them in line. So from this committee, what we want to do is help the rugby union get back on track, help the rugby players get back on track, speak to the big corporates in the country. As you know, I'm also very much part of the corporate world in this country. If you take the top 20 companies in this country, they are all billion rupee plus profit-making entities. I'm sure they will support the young minister to help our young sportsmen. So our focus will be from this committee to help these rugby players back on to get back into the game.
Right. An issue that we initially saw when the minister appointed this advisory committee for cricket was that there was some conflict regarding who was really in control. Has the minister given a clear mandate to the advisory committee and Sri Lanka Rugby as to what its different roles are?
Absolutely. When a committee of this nature is appointed, obviously there is going to be a bit of concern, because as you know, the federations are appointed by the stakeholders, and they have a responsibility as well. But the minister made it very clear that this is not a committee appointed to overlook or in any way interfere into the sport or derail anything that's happening. We are there to support the federation. If the federation has any issues with that and they have concerns, they have to speak to the minister. They first have to speak to us, and if it's not sorted at that level, they will have to speak to the minister, because the minister is very clear. He wants professionalism to come in and immediately sort the ensuring problems. And as a minister and his officials, some of them will not have the time or the expertise. Of course, this minister has more expertise than most because he's a national captain. But when you take even other sports, the sports minister, as you know, it's a government entity, very good people, but they may not have the ability, the knowledge or the ability to really make calls. So we as a committee will look at making those hard calls, making the decisions, and then the minister and the federation will have to work together to go forward. Yes, the federations may sometimes be a bit wary, but I think on the long run, they will all understand that we are there to help them and not to, in any way stop them from moving forward.
Right. Sri Lanka will, as you mentioned, Sri Lanka will be fielding a team for the Asian Sevens next month. It's a team that doesn't include players from Kandy, SC and CRNFC due to the selection criteria. Do you think that criteria was fair considering the issues that the Kandy and the CRNFC players had?
A very good question. Shehan, let me tell you, this Kandy issue has been there for 20 years. So when I was president, the first thing I did, because at that time the Kandy players were not part of the national setup, they were not coming forward. There are many reasons for that. So we looked to somehow my idea was to get the best players in the country playing for your country. That's the key. So we moved in and we made compromises, because these boys are based in Kandy, they have issues traveling. So we even set up camp in Kandy on certain occasions. We cut down training and we brought in professionals to overlook the setup, in the sense that you can do your weight training and stuff in another location and join in. This happens even in New Zealand or like England or any of the top countries, and it worked. So what happened now was that over the years, as you know, Kandy also has been a bit naughty. They also, have been taking players from other clubs because they're financially much stronger, which is a good thing. And, in today's world, you can't, find fault with them. But they've taken a lot of players from clubs and depleted the other clubs. So there is a huge issue within the system. And a lot of those players actually sit on the bench. They don't actually even play for Kandy. The other issue is that obviously because Kandy looks after them and all that, their commitment has always been more to Kandy. And some of the coaches have come and told me as president and the exco that sometimes their performance outside has been a bit poor. But I must tell you, in my time, the legends of Kandy, such as Fazil Marija, Anuradha Vilavara, Danushka Ranjan, Dharmapala, and Suri, to name a few, I'm naming 5, all world-class players, and including Veera Singh, right?
Yeah.
There are so many more, and I'm sorry if I've missed out some names, right? These are world-class players and they performed admirably at national level. There was a lot of effort made by the rugby union to sort these issues out, right? And bring them into the system. But as I said, Kandy, again, pulling out of the sevens is extremely unfortunate. Excuses such as, we haven't trained enough, all that cannot be accepted, because every club is in the same situation. And every club has to front up, because there is a national tournament coming up, and that's a World Cup qualifier. So them not fronting up and playing is a big problem. Now, having issues with top class players is nothing new. With that in mind, Imti Marika, who was our national coach, started this program to have 30 top class players, including a lot in the age group of 19 to 25. And we also focused on our under 17, under 19 and under 23 national teams. At Asia Rugby, I started the Asian Sevens for all the junior teams, because we needed a feeder. And the Sevens, the best time to start is under 17. So the system was in place and we had enough players, say in case top players pull out. But now, that obviously with COVID and all these issues, that hasn't happened. So there are two things here. You cannot allow the Kandy players not to take part and go through what all the other players are going through and have a free pass doing a fitness test. You can't do that. Right. However good you are, you may be the best in the world, you have to be part of the system. You have to do what's required to be selected.
Yeah. But doesn't it hamper Sri Lanka? Now, like you mentioned, it's an opportunity for Sri Lanka to qualify for the World Cup next year. Doesn't it hamper Sri Lanka not having arguably the best players in the country representing the...
Yes. So it's a call the union must make, the minister must make, what they are going to do about it. Because if you allow that, what then if CH says they are not playing, police says they are not playing, and there are 3 or 4 other teams playing? We'll have to allow everyone not to play, and you have to pick a few names and then, put your team together. Right. So it's a chicken and egg. You can't allow free passes. Then we come to the situation, should they have been allowed to play for other clubs? What I did when I was president was that we allowed them to. But then again, Kandy might say, we are not going to allow our players to play for other clubs because they are contracted. So this issue is there. But overall, I think, when you take today's setup, the gap between the players is very small. So I think in a way, Sri Lanka will feel a very strong side. They will be very competitive. But unfortunately, they will be very short of match practice, because a lot of the other countries now, for instance, Japan and Hong Kong, are coming after 2 World Series tournaments. Okay. So I think we will miss the candy players, but I don't think we are going to be in any way hurt too badly.
Obviously, it's a broad topic and
It's a very
lot of
sensitive
areas,
topic,
yeah.
I would say, because you can't allow one set of rules for one set of players and another set for another set. But it has to be balanced. Now, for instance, when you talk about national training and you tell the candy players, we are going to train in Colombo for 2 months, it's unfair.
Yeah.
Their livelihood is there, their jobs are there, their families are there. You can't do that. So you have to have maybe 2 weeks in Kandy, maybe 2 weeks here because they have all the facilities. Or you monitor their training there and then bring them together. There are many options you can use.
My last question is not related to rugby. Your 2 daughters are national level tennis players. As a father and someone who is passionate about sports, how much pleasure does it bring you to see your daughters reach that level in their sport? And also, what do you hope they learn from the experience as tennis players?
Immense pleasure, I must say, because I think for any child to play a sport and also to play it well and at national level is an amazing honor and privilege. So I'm fortunate that I experienced that and my 2 girls experienced that. Of course, they far surpassed me because tennis is, to me, probably the hardest sport in the world. I mean, it is mentally challenging, it's physically draining, and the effort that goes in just to be able to hit a ball at that level in that style for so long. I mean, unless you've experienced it or you know what it is about, you'll never understand how hard it is. So the amount of effort that the 2 have put is just amazing. They've been, amazing players, and also they're straight A students. So that's a big, I mean, it's not a problem, it's a blessing, but it is a problem because when you are very good at your studies as well as your sport, it's hard because sometimes, you're more inclined to go with your studies because, to me, I think that's the easy option. The hard option is professional sport. So they're both still playing. I mean, my elder girl is at Pepperdine University. So she's just made the squad, and that's fabulous because they're West Coast champions and the level of tennis there is just very, very high. I mean, you have Olympic bronze medalist. You have #1 players from other countries. They are all on tennis calls and they're full-time players. My daughter isn't. Younger one is here and she's also going. So hopefully she will also play at that level. Then, of course, once you're 18 and 19, it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
We can support. But yes, it's been an amazing journey.
What do you hope they learn from the experience of playing sports?
Well, discipline, sportsmanship, to be fair, to be gracious in defeat. And the hardest part of all this is, accepting defeat and getting up the next day and being able to do the same thing. It's so hard. It's so hard because it's an individual sport. In cricket or rugby, you can say that fellow dropped the catch, or he missed a pass, or he missed a kick, and you have a support system around you. But this is a very lonely sport. You're seated alone. No one can talk to you during a match. It's mentally really, really tough. So I think they learned all those things, and also to be able to focus and do something really well. These are all good things, and for the rest of your life, you have those experiences. You'll never forget those, and it gives you a really good grounding.
Thank you, Asanga, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to be here. To our viewers, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you on our next episode. Till then, take care and stay safe.